Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Dying Out Loud. You're watching Dying Out Loud on the line, and this is our second show. So thanks for tuning in tonight. We want you to call. We want to hear from you. The number is 720-619-2288. If you're calling from the U.S., if you're from outside, there's a link on the web link that you can find in the description. But thanks for tuning in. We hope to have some interesting conversations today. The lines are open, so feel free to call in and talk about whatever's on your mind. Honestly, it's a wide open conversation we like to have. I've been doing some writing on my my newest book, which will be called Dying Out Loud, I think, as it's a working title now anyway. And in there, I do a lot of writing about dying and living and all that is contained therein. And this quote, I found this quote recently by an author named Jack London. And I know when I was a kid, I read two of his books, Call of the Wild and White Fang. He wrote a lot about wolves for some reason. But he said this about living, which I found pretty powerful. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. And I find that to be profound in a sense that as I've been, most of you who know me know that I'm living with terminal illness, ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. And I've been dealing with that a little over 4 years. And since then, I've been dying out loud, talking about dying out loud. And during that time, I talk a lot about what's important in life and how to face death as an atheist and how I'm facing it and those kind of things. But what I've talked more and more about and what I find important is not so much the length of time that we live or the number of days that we have, but actually the quality of the days. And I find there to be a bit of an infatuation in many people's minds with the length of the life we live rather than the quality of the life we live. It's not a race to see how long you can live, in my opinion. It's about what you do with the life you live. And so that's a lot of the conversation that I've been having with Dying Out Loud and the people that I've interacted with and heard from is what are we doing with the life that we have? And so that's a lot of what Dying Out Loud is about. So people who've said, well, what are you going to do? Talk about dying every week on this show? No, we're going to talk about that, how to, what it's like to face death and what people feel about death. But it's more about what you're doing with your life, how you're writing the story that you write. So call in about any of those kind of things, what you feel about death, what you feel about life, how you feel about purpose and meaning and things like that. And that's a big part of the conversation we're going to have. So I would like, without further ado, to welcome my guest for this week. You will all know him. He's very popular on this channel, The Line. So without further ado, please welcome in Matt Dillahunty, the man.
Hey, Dave.
Matt, how you doing, man?
I'm all right. I've been better, been worse. Yeah.
Same.
It's one of those things where by the way, the lines are open. Somebody in chat asked if there's a call-in show. Yes, every single show on the line is a call-in show.
Yes.
Hence the name. There's lines open. We're happy to take your calls. You can ask Dave questions. You can ask me questions, whatever. Yeah. I had a thought while you were talking. I mean, I realized right off the bat I was down picking up a prescription, but on occasion, people have asked me what regrets I've had in life. And typically, I think if you went back, I tend to say I don't have any regrets because of the notion that I'm happy with who I am, and everything that I did or everything that happened to me led to who I am. I couldn't, if I hadn't, they're like, oh, do you regret the 20 years that you spent as a fundamentalist Christian? No, because I wouldn't be anywhere near as good at debating them had I, just been the average, I don't give a shit believer. Mm-hmm. And I like that answer, but also I think there's a completely different context in which it's perfectly okay to have regrets, because while everything that I did, every mistake that I made, the mistakes that I've made that I'm still paying for, some of them had some very valuable lessons, but I wish that I hadn't needed to learn those lessons. Like I had open heart surgery a year and a half ago. I'm a diabetic and dealing with vascular issues and neuropathy and things like this. I really wish that I wish I hadn't had to learn the lessons about how to be a terrible diabetic. I wish I'd learned the lessons on how to be a good diabetic, and then maybe I wouldn't have had a heart attack. Maybe I wouldn't have had other health issues that ran up bills and things like that. It's not the things that a lot of people might regret. I regret things I've done to me that forced me to learn lessons that I shouldn't have ever needed to learn, if that makes sense. It's like, how stupid do you have to be to realize, it's like when you're a teenager and you think you're invincible and you're never going to die and everything's fine. And, you can run 100 miles an hour straight into a wall and fall down on the ground and get right back up and do it again. That's the types of things that I have regrets for. There's other minor things, like I wish I had responded to this caller perhaps in a different way, or I wish that I had taken a breath and paused and waited before I responded. But all of those lessons I take on board because I had to make those mistakes to learn them. So it's not like I regret the mistakes that I clearly didn't learn from, or didn't learn enough fast enough, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I think a very powerful statement. Regret is a tough word to use, but I think it's accurate, because we do make mistakes, we learn from them, and it'd be nice if we'd learn without the mistake, depending on how costly it was. But everything that we've done, everything that has happened to us, accumulates to make us who we are now. And without those, we're a different person. And so I think that's a valid point and an important one. Yeah, I tend to learn more from my mistakes than I do the other way. That's just kind of how I've always rolled. We're going to jump into calls in a minute. We've got one in the queue and a couple more, I hope, coming. Reminder, at the end of the show, we will take super chat of, let's do $5 or more, just, to keep me and Matt busy. And so any comments you want to make on the super chats, that'll be read at the end of the show, and we would be happy to talk about anything you want to talk about. But for now, let's talk to Cass from North Carolina. Cass, you're on the line. What's on your mind?
Hi, Cass.
Hey, Dave. Well, you and I are both ex-pastors. We've been friends for 6 years, and a lot of times, if there is a brave Christian out there that will say, "I don't get it," because I came from the school of thought that the world was lost and humanity needs saving, and the only thing good about us was Jesus. And over the last 15 years, I've swung completely to the other side of the spectrum, where I think Jesus is toxic and is killing the human race. And I can see sometimes they're dumbfounded, and I wanted to have like an answer at my sleeve. And so I came up with this recently, which I don't normally care. I'm not an apologist, but it was, I have come to find that my favorite people are people that are self-accepting, comfortable in their own skin, free to be themselves, unmasked, vulnerable, transparent, etc. And yet, when my experience with Christianity was, the more I was hidden in Christ, the least of me, I was emptied out. And so the two agendas are so black and white that sometimes the Christian that comes along says, "Come on, why are you guys so hard on Christianity? It's just a mild, benign religion." And I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out. I find myself really working and detoxing from all that hide myself and shame myself and realize that I'm a wretch with no good in me. I'm literally on the other end. It's like, I'm awesome. It's so good to be human. And the more authentic I am with bringing myself to a room, we talk about you're not very present. Well, how non-present we're Christians. And so anyway, what do you guys think?
Yeah, Matt, what do you think about the Cass and I were talking the other day about this, and so we thought it'd be interesting to chat on the show about it. But what do you, Christians who or anybody who says, what's the harm in believing in God? If like my little 87-year-old mother who just loves Jesus and believes in God and thinks that he's wonderful and she's going to go to heaven when she dies to be with my dad. What's the harm in that? What's the harm in Christianity? What do you say to that, Matt?
Well, there's probably no harm as long as she doesn't make any decisions about her life or anybody else's life based on that. And then as soon as you're put in a position where you have to make decisions about how to act in reality, if the decision is based on something that's not true, then you're going to be making bad decisions. And so, like, when my grandma was 91, we sat around and played cards and we talked a little bit. I wasn't going to spend a single second trying to talk her out of her religious beliefs. It doesn't do me any good. She's not making any decisions. She's not voting. She's at death's door. She's not deciding for other people anymore. That's all sailed. And so in her case, maybe it's not a big issue. For me, it still would be, because I care about what's real and I care about what's true, and I want to make decisions for good reasons, and I want to like who I am. But that's me coming at this from someone who has been religious and found their way out to being an atheist, and seeing the value in that, of being free to live my life as who I am. To, when the Christians come at me and they're like, "Oh, you secretly know there's a God," it just makes me chuckle, because I know that they're wrong, and it's really pathetic to listen to them kind of flail around trying to come up with, this doesn't make any sense. How on earth could Matt go from being a Southern Baptist to an outspoken atheist? There's got to be something going on. There's got to be some lie, some deception there. And it's because they can't imagine the notion that someone doesn't sincerely believe. Yeah. And it's difficult to not say, well, I've been on both sides of it, but between me and my grandma, or me and your mom, I don't know your mom's history, but between me and my grandma, I'm the only one that had been on both sides of it. And so there was not much point in having a discussion with her. Now, I also just don't run around to family members. I don't go knocking on doors. I don't go to other family members saying, "Hey, let's fix this so you can stop believing in this Jesus thing," because it's really personally annoying to me. I would never ever do that. But any of them that want to have a conversation, I'm open to that. And I am, no matter what my detractors may say, I'm absolutely a better human being in virtually every way as a non-believer than I ever was or could have been as a sincere fundamentalist Christian.
Yeah, I learned last week that you're actually one of the elect, according to a caller that we had.
Really?
I don't know if you got that message, but yeah,
How do I get unelected? Because I'd really like that.
You're safe. You're safe, Matt. Yeah, I was telling him the same thing. If I'm the elect, can I opt out of that? Because I want no part of that.
How weird that I might be one of the elect and don't want it. And there might be people out there who are convinced that they are one of the elect and desperately want it, and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what kind of God is this person worshiping where he's going to pick me?
That makes no sense. So, Cass, what do you think? I know we were talking about the notion that the idea that we live with a God where the stakes are so high that everything is on the line, and you have to be on the right side of it with everything that you do, and how toxic that kind of mentality is.
Yeah. Well, as we think about what we know about the amygdala and fight or flight, is that it tells our body to take all the creative energy into survival. Whereas if you're in a think tank or you're just you need the levity of playfulness to actually write good songs, write good poetry, write good movie scripts. I mean, creativity can't be done from a place of fear. And so when you're put in a predicament by the high stakes, and there are no higher stakes than heaven and hell and eternity. And so if you just look at secular humanism and science, like this life is insanely chaotic and wild, and we're just lucky we hit the lottery to even have our bodies and our minds, and we're coexisting and communicating, and it's nuts and it's fun, and let's do it. I feel like your opening quote from the guy's like, let's live this, man. But you can't have that levity and that playfulness if you got the all-seeing eye that's very, very judging and critical. And I mean, what does that do to a human versus, hey, there's a big safety net. Go for it. Jump for that trapeze. That's just the opposite message.
Yeah, I know when I lived as a Christian, there was always a lot of pressure to get it right, to be in the will of God, to make sure that you're hearing God's voice. I've been asked many times about my ALS, how I think it would have been if I'd have been diagnosed as a Christian. And it would have been much more complicated because I would have had to figure out, where's God in this? What's God saying?
Yeah.
What's God doing? Whereas an atheist, it's just shit happens, man. People get sick. And there's no high stakes thing here. It's just, you know what? This is the life that I have, and I've got to deal with it. Now let's get on with it.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I know that they say that we went out from under that just so we can sin, but it's really just so we can freaking live. Just dance and sing and get jolly. It's because it's that whole burden when it was lifted off, and I know it took years and layers like an onion, but the more I get free to just be me and celebrate me. And I'm not perfect, but I'm also just perfect as I am, and like no judgment. Who's fucking judging me? Yeah. I don't need any. I don't report to anybody. I'm an adult.
I'm judging you because you said fuck. So they can't do that.
I listening to you, and I really appreciate what you're saying, Cass. But putting my theistic hat back on, what you're talking about is stuff that I used to mention, and then the theists, well, not just theists, the Southern Baptists that I grew up with, it was, you're just a hedonist. God's given you over to a reprobate mind. You're celebrating sin. And I'm like, it's not just, hey, there's nobody judging me, so I can go do anything. There were things that I would have done that were prohibited that weren't going to harm anybody.
Right.
That did absolutely nothing. The very concept of sin is that your thoughts and your actions are somehow offensive to a God, and that you can't do anything to make up for this, and it doesn't need to make sense to you. It's not like I was going to run around and murder people. I have zero interest.
Right.
I don't have any interest in even, physically harming anybody, despite the temptation sometimes when I start talking politics or I'm up against some, absolute bigot, or in traffic when people act entitled, and I want, hypothetically, I would throat punch them, but I can't be violent, and so there's none of those things happened. It's, hey, I'd like to have a drink every now and then. I barely ever drink. I mean, I have a drink on occasion. There's some alcoholism in my family, and fortunately, I don't suffer from that. But I like my brain when it's working most of the time, and so drinking doesn't have that big of appeal. But I'd like to be able to do that without judgment. Matter of fact, one of my friends growing up wanted to so much that he became a Catholic because they would let him drink.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you and I took this stuff seriously, and then you wonder how I can be an atheist. I'm like, I wonder how you can be a Catholic. Is this? Let me just put on the version of religion that's most convenient for what I want to do. And what the Christians would say is, that's why you're an atheist now. You wanted to do these sinful things. No, it hasn't. I wanted to do these things for years beforehand. I kept going to people saying, why is this wrong? Why is it? Why is it a problem for two people of the same gender to love each other?
Mm-hmm.
I have no interest in people of the same gender, but I was in the Navy for 8.5 years under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and had to help process people out of the military when it was discovered that they were gay. And on more than one occasion, these were some of the best workers we had, some of the people who were career-minded, who were good and decent people who had done nothing wrong other than they had sex with or loved someone that pissed off some weak, toxically masculine dude bro who wanted we don't want any queers around here. And none of that made any sense to me. If God made sense, I'd probably still be a believer. I don't think I would have had the gumption to challenge things, but I didn't give up on a God belief merely so I could sin. I was already sinning.
I did plenty of sinning as a Christian. Yeah. Sin, get forgiveness, and move on and do it again. Now this God we served, all three of us, is just very, very sensitive and tender heart. I mean, you can offend this God in the slightest of ways with a mere thought. You can get him all upset, and that's just it's a pathetic thing when you think about it. Honestly,
it's a very weak God.
Very weak. Well, thanks, Cass. It's a good conversation.
Yeah, man. Love you guys.
Appreciate you getting us going tonight.
Thanks, Cass. Way to start it off.
Be sure to remember our Patreon. It's patreon.com/call the line. Appreciate the support there. Like and subscribe, of course. And let's take a look at the shows we have coming up this week. Tomorrow night, we have this very same Matt Dillahunty on The Hang Up with his guest. What?
Can this guy just not shut the fuck up? He's got to do a show every night of the week.
He can't. He loves the sound of his own voice. He's got Aaron Lewis on with him tomorrow night, and Aaron will be our guest on this show a week from tonight. So you're going to be seeing a lot of her. I've jumped ahead. Sorry. Katy and Ben on Transatlantic on Thursday. And then coming around next week on Sunday, you've got the Sunday show with, God damn it, Matt again.
I know.
Matt Dillahunty, No Illusions. And then on Monday, we got Skeptalk with Shannon Q and Apologia. And then we'll be back here next week on this show. So we've got plenty of stuff coming up. If you love the sound of Matt's voice, you're in luck because there's a lot coming up.
And if not, God help you, because nobody else will.
Yeah, if you don't like the sound of it, I'm sorry. No, some good shows coming up, good guests and good conversations. So let's jump another call. What do you say?
Absolutely. Not too long ago, somebody was like, "Oh, I heard that you retired from the atheist experience," and I'm like, "I didn't retire. I quit. I'm doing more than ever."
Yeah, you're busier than ever. You really are. Let's talk to Liev from Oregon. He, him. Liev, you're on the line. What's on your mind?
Hey, good evening, Dave. Good evening, Matt. Long-time
Hey.
listener, first-time caller.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm calling is, well, I was, listening to your intro, and you guys were just talking about kind of like, the meaning of life and pursuit of meaning. And as it happens, that's been something I've been thinking a lot about as well. And in my intro, I said I'm just sort of as I'm pursuing investigating like meaning, I'm finding theism is making more sense for me. And my background, I've been an atheist the vast majority of my life, and not as like an atheist, I'm a sinner, as in like I was someone who was not convinced that a God existed. And my background is Jewish, and both of my parents were atheists. And I say Jewish is very much more a cultural Jewish. We hardly ever went to any services, had very little contact with the rest of my Jewish family. And I should say, I apologize if I have to hang up suddenly. I'm watching my daughter right now, so her attention is more important than yours.
That's fair.
Okay.
But I found over the last few years that I've always had an interest in religion. It's just like an interesting thing to study.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of swung back around to Judaism, and the more I've been looking at like the history of development of Jewish thought,
Liev?
I've found
Liev?
more. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you like move the mic away from your mouth? You're kind of overdriving it, and it's popping, and so you're breaking up just a little bit.
Terribly sorry. Is this better?
Much
better. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I've found that as I've been reading like writers like Maimonides, various rabbis over time, I've been looking at scripture like the Torah less as, even though Torah means the law, less as a rule book and a static document, and more as like a 3,500-year-old journal of various people through time trying to connect with what they understood to be the divine. And looking at it that way, I was like, okay, so this isn't like the end. This is the beginning of a journey, and it's keep going on. And as I've been reading more modern Jewish thinkers and thinking about things myself, I find that when people talk about God, I'm agreeing with an awful lot of what they're saying. And while we might disagree, at least where I am right now, while we might disagree about the definitions of what God is, we agree on an awful lot of what the end result of what we should be doing with our lives is.
What should we be doing with our lives? I have like 50 questions for you, but let's just start there.
Go for it. What we should be doing with our lives. And again, this is all like I am still in journey here, so that's why I didn't propose this. Like, I'm not here to like debate, and I don't have the best arguments, but just kind of sharing thoughts. And I'm interested in what you folks are thinking too, because you talk with lots of different people and are very immersed in the idea of thinking about God and the divine. So what should we be doing with our lives? Is the main thing is thinking about what we should be doing with our lives, which is reductive. But I've been very impressed that like one of the big thrusts with Judaism is study. Think about what you're doing. Sure, look at the rabbis, and of course, oftentimes follow what the Torah says. But what the Torah means in one's current life can change and has changed with each generation. And thinking about what do these words and what do these experiences mean for me today is different in every generation and can change in some person's circumstance. So the first commandment, I guess the 0th commandment is think about what you're doing. And is what you're doing a benefit to yourself? And is it a benefit to the people around you? And if it's not, if your answer is like, I could be doing better, think about how you could be doing better.
Well, let me jump in. It sounds a lot like humanism, because
Yes.
what you're saying is, if I'm thinking about what I'm doing and how it can benefit those around me, I guess I don't see where a God fits into that. Why is a God needed for that kind of a lifestyle?
And so, yeah, stage 2 for that is, and I would say it's not needed, because like I said, I described myself as a humanist and atheist for many years. I don't think I was being a terrible person, and I would say 95% of my life is pretty similar to what I was before I started thinking of myself as a theist. The difference, that last 5%, is scale. And are there things that I can be doing? I'll put it this way. Are there things that I can be doing that extend beyond just my immediate experience? And the way I've been trying to understand that, again, I'm sorry if my language is not precise because I'm still working on all of this, but there is a larger, there's a perspective of humanity, like, through generation, genuinely building up, which I acknowledge are humanism, but also not just as part of the human experience, but as a part of how we interact with other life on Earth, how Earth is interacting with us, in a very large cosmic scale. Yes.
Yeah.
I apologize, but you're saying absolutely nothing. So what is it about your views? What is it about your views that is specifically contingent on being a theist?
Good question.
The note in your call says, in a lifetime pursuit of finding meaning, I'm finding theism is making more sense. But like Matt said, everything you've described so far is a life that looks to be devoid of a God of any kind. It's just a life of humanism and human experience lived one with another. So where does a God fit into that? Because nothing you've said so far points to a God.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So in my years of reading scripture from various religions, I always had to what I call translate. Like, it's like, okay, so this God doesn't exist. It's a fictional character. What is it this person is trying to say? And it was an awful lot of work to translate into something that made sense. And I find I'm not doing that anymore. And after I've stopped translating, it's like, okay, so, and again, this God as an actual entity, but not necessarily something personal or a active agent in the world, but something that does exist and has a perspective. It is making more sense, and I am understanding more about the lessons that are being communicated in the scripture and also from modern writers. And it's that last 5% of going from God as a fictional character to God is something that is watching and we are interacting with. That a lot of this stuff is fitting into place now that didn't used to.
Yeah, Liev, we're still getting nowhere. You said in all of your years of reading scripture, and I don't know why anybody would want to read scripture to find meaning. There may or may not be meaning in there. It may be an interesting hobby, but it seems like you, from the way you've described this, you had in your head, I need to be reading scripture because there is meaning there. And what you talked about was, you said you used to translate it in your head as, if God doesn't exist, what is this person trying to say? But what if what that person's trying to say isn't relevant, isn't meaningful, and requires a God belief?
Great. So first, it was an interesting hobby for me. I just thought it was, it was important to a lot of people, and it wasn't something. It was an interesting hobby. Like, you could play chess or watch football, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I'm sorry. Could you ask your second part again, Matt?
What if what they're saying requires a God belief?
Right.
If you try and take scripture and say,
Mhm.
what was the author trying to say if they realized there wasn't a God? What if that's
Mhm.
preposterous and the author was saying things because they believed in a God? In that case, you're inventing your own understanding that has nothing to do with their intent.
Yes. And before, that's what I was doing, and I was aware of it. Where, like, if I went back in time and spoke to the person who, first originated the scripture, I know it's more complicated than that, but I think you get the idea. We probably wouldn't be agreeing on what they were saying, and I was experiencing that, where, like, I just, in the end, wasn't getting what they were getting, and then I would listen to a rabbi or something, and they're like, I just don't get where you're coming from at the end of the day. But then I've gone back to that, and and again, it's fair to say that what I'm saying isn't much because I'm still working on it. But
it'd be really cool
yeah,
if you just answer the question.
I'm sorry.
You seem to have a flawed assumption that you can find meaning and value in this in religious writings by ignoring the religious tenets that they're ascribed to. Why on earth do you think that is true? Why is it not the case that the wisdom that you find in there is found everywhere, is not tied to anything true about the religion, and the rest of it is garbage? Why is that not the case?
Because the person who was writing at the time did have meaning, and it was true for them.
No. There's no such thing as
truth, universal meaning?
Okay. Stop. There's no such thing as true for them. The fact that they believed it is independent of whether or not it's true. If it's true, it's true. There's no such thing as, oh, that's true for me. No, that means it's not true.
Is that fair enough?
So universal truths that have been true for all time. Granted, it's like scientific truths, objective facts have always been true. It doesn't require anyone to be even thinking about them, right? We agree with that. That's factual truths. Sure.
I don't know of any other truths.
Yeah.
So just so we're not talking past each other, what would you call something that someone personally finds very meaningful, but is not necessarily the same meaning for every person?
It's not a truth.
Doesn't make it true. Yeah.
Okay.
It can be
meaningful. What should we call this?
It is true. It is true that so, like, for example, I like chocolate ice cream. Maybe you like vanilla. It is true that I like chocolate, but there's no truth there of chocolate has the most meaning or anything. The sort of subjective assessment that is contingent on my personal opinion is not it's true that I think this, but it has no truth value outside of my experience.
Yeah, Liev, it sounds like you're conflating truth with meaning. Meaning is not necessarily truth, and you keep using them interchangeably almost.
Sure, that's what I was doing, and thank you for clarifying. So I'm just talking about meaning, subjective meaning, and I have found that I am gaining a deeper subjective meaning, a deeper understanding of the things that happen around me.
What's that mean?
Sorry? What do I mean by that?
I don't know what that means. Every time somebody says a deeper subjective meaning, a deeper meaning, I don't know what any of that means. It sounds like nonsense to me.
A richer experience of life.
What is a richer experience of life?
That just my daily experience of living, I am gaining more joy and appreciation of it.
Sure. So basically what you're saying is what you're experiencing makes you happier.
Yes, sure.
Sure.
Okay, so how
then we don't need the woo-woo sophistry of deeper meaning and all that. You can just say,
Yeah,
this
okay.
makes me happy.
Okay.
You mentioned it. You mentioned an interactive God, Liev. And what evidence do you have that there's a God anywhere helping you find this deeper meaning?
I don't, and I don't think that's the
Okay.
nature of God. God is not actively helping us. God is present,
Then what good is
and
he? What good is he?
functionally not very.
Okay, fair enough.
God is not. I don't believe in a God that answers
How do you
prayers.
know
I
he's
don't
that?
believe in a. Sorry, what?
Well, you keep describing a God, and when we ask how you know this, you don't have an answer, and yet you say, "Oh, but I think God is like this." Well, how do you? Why do you think that God is like the way you describe?
And I hate to be nitpicky here, but this is actually kind of important. Have I actually said God is anything?
No,
I've
and
been
Well,
that's the
trying
let's
not
problem.
to.
That's the
well
problem.
So
let's
Because
that's
if you
pretend that
so
you didn't, even though I heard
okay.
words that seemed like that. So
Okay.
now, what is God? Because that's all I care about is
yeah,
the truth.
Yeah.
If
if you
you're
name a
dancing
And that's
God,
around,
actually part.
so what is God, and how
Fair.
do you know?
Fair. So, Maimonides or Rambam, one of
I'm not
arguably the
talking to
most
them. I'm
important.
talking to
hey,
you.
back up a
Okay.
bit from your mic again, Liev. You're still popping. Back up a
Oh,
little bit.
terribly sorry. Okay. It is a well-established and seriously considered way of approaching the definition of God to not describe any attributes to it in Jewish tradition.
No, no,
And I
no, no.
okay.
Something without attributes is not anything. In order for it to
Yes.
be something, it must have an attribute. In order for you to point to it and say that is a
Mhm.
thing, it must have some attribute. In order for you to say I believe this thing is real, there must be some attribute. Saying I'm not going to give it any attributes is cowardly bullshit of a way of hiding the fact that you don't have a good understanding of what it is that you're professing, which is exactly what happens when people make stuff up
Mhm.
and use a placeholder. So the God, in order for it to be a cogent concept, must
Okay.
have some properties. If you say that you are worshiping or believe in a God that has no properties, you are essentially claiming to have. Well, anyway, go ahead.
I think so. All right. What I think God is, let's all,
Uh,
is an
let's go
emergent
there.
process from the dynamic interactions of all the different systems in the universe.
Oh dear God, an emergent
It's
process.
it's pantheism.
Okay, so how does that help you? Give me
Mhm.
something practical from all of that word salad you just gave me.
Okay.
How does that help you find meaning, as you stated in your call?
I
Because I
am
don't
part of that
understand any of
process.
that. Pardon?
Again, it's basically pantheism, but I am that process. I am both interacted with and participate in those processes, and that makes all the actions I do have more weight than just my personal happiness. And by understanding that, I find I'm more inclined to put positive feedback back into the system. I hope that wasn't a word salad.
Well, there's just no God involved in that, Liev. I just don't see
Mhm.
you're describing the human experience and how we evolve and grow and learn and interact with one another, but I don't see any God involved in that because you haven't given us a definition of what that God would be and look like and interact. What's the point of calling it a God? I don't get it.
Right. So I agree with you that a God is not necessary for that approach.
Okay.
My personal subjective experiences, I have been finding thinking about that God has made that process easier for me.
So I could think about a zebra that I think zebras are cute and interesting and who else what other animal has these black and white stripes? And I could
Mm-hmm.
just think about zebras all the time and say that that is improving my quality of life. That'd be the same thing of what you're telling us you do now, but you're calling it God.
I would say exactly right, And if zebras had a millennia of tradition of people expanding upon that idea, it would be exactly the same.
It doesn't matter what a millennia of people think about a particular God. That's irrelevant. It doesn't make it true.
It doesn't change the facts, but so how about this? It doesn't change how long people have studied evolution, right? It's always been there. It doesn't, us understanding evolution doesn't change anything about how the process works, but it's deepened our understanding and enabled us to have a better view of the world. I presume you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I guess we're kind
of the same thing. There's just more evidence for evolution than God.
No, the difference is that evolution is a real thing that we can identify, test, describe, and has fucking properties. It's not pantheism.
Sure.
You're saying you went through all of this of you're desperately looking for meaning, and so you go read scriptures and you find some things of value in there, but clearly they couldn't have been talking about an actual God. And then you find out, well, now I got to look at it as if they're talking about an actual God. So now I'm going to go ahead and imagine a pantheistic God because, as you said, thinking about that God has made the process easier. But that has nothing to do with whether or not that God is real. And a pantheistic God is no God at all. It is simply looking at the universe and saying, you are God. That's meaningless. It doesn't fall into gods of classical theism. It isn't an agent. It has no thoughts. It has no desires. It has no goals. It doesn't care about you. It cannot inject any meaning into anything. So why are you finding theism? By the way, your call said that you're a theist and you're finding theism makes more sense, but you're talking about pantheism where there's nothing there.
So, again, definitions again. I say I'm a theist because when people talk about God, I find myself agreeing with them. It is not, again, I agree with basically everything you just said, though, Matt.
So basically you just agree with everybody. This is what happens. This is what happens when you stop. This is what happens when you buy into bullshit. When you talk to theists, you find yourselves agreeing with them. When you talk to atheists, you find yourselves agreeing with them. I want to agree with the actual fucking truth. Do you care about whether or not your beliefs are true?
Yes.
I don't believe you.
Your definition of God, when you say God, Matt, we say different things, unfortunately. Maybe if I said pantheism, that'd be clear. When you talk about God, I don't believe in that God.
You don't believe in any God. Pantheism
that you
not
reject,
a God.
I also
not even theism.
Right. Yeah, sure.
So you're not a theist. Is there an agent God, a thinking being that you believe exists?
No.
Okay.
Then you're not a theist.
You're not a theist.
I get it.
By your definition of theist, I'm not a theist.
Hang on. Do you want to point to pantheism? What value does pantheistic belief add to reality?
None. I'm not.
Thank you.
Does any belief add to reality?
I'm done.
Okay.
We've gone in enough circles here. I just would encourage you. I mean, Liev, you're describing a life that doesn't need a God, and yet you seem to be clinging to the need for a God, and we just don't understand why you're doing that because you have no clear definition of what this God is that you think you need. So I would encourage you
to. What's worse?
It makes me happy.
What's worse is that you just set up and demonstrated contradictory thinking because you said you cared about what was true and that you're desperate to find meaning and that you're finding theism makes more sense. And then when addressed, you point out that theism that you believe in, pantheism, does not add any meaning to the universe, which means that you are not believing something for meaning. You're believing something for the other reason that you stated, because it makes you feel good and nothing more.
I understand if you went in the call. There's just one thing you just said there, Matt. Are there ideas that add to the universe?
I'm not talking about ideas. I'm talking about meaning.
Okay.
I'm talking about whether or not there's a God.
Which is subjective. What we established before. Meaning is subjective.
No.
It's not. Okay. We might be talking. We've been talking past each other the whole conversation. I apologize. I've been trying to.
We haven't been talking past each other. You
Okay.
have untenable positions that are contradictory to the things that you've tried to say. Period. You say you care about meaning and that theism brings meaning. And then when we get drilled down to what theism you're talking about, you describe a theism and admit that it does not add any meaning. And then you try to suggest that it can't add any meaning. So now you have put yourself in a position where the very thing that was important that you were arguing for, you have now argued against by your own admission as soon as we got down to brass tacks.
I have misunderstood what we went by meaning. If you're done with the call, that's fine. Could I ask for an example of meaning that adds to the universe?
I think we've kind of.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Gone around this enough. We've got some other calls we need to get to. We've kind of spent enough time on this because we're kind of going in circles here. Maybe, maybe call back another time, one of our shows. Think through some of these ideas and maybe get a little more solid on what you think you're talking about here, because it's been a little confusing, honestly. Okay. All right, we'll let you go though.
I will think about meaning that adds to the universe.
Okay.
God, stop. The ridiculous stuff that you decide to latch onto in order to avoid actually thinking while pretending that you're thinking is embarrassingly bad. Oh, let me think about meaning that adds to the universe. What the fuck else is meaning? What value are you talking about?
Well, you asked me something. What does my belief or theism add to the universe?
No, that's not what I said. I said, what could a pantheistic God, which it's not even a God, what does that add to the universe?
And I said nothing, because does any idea add to the universe?
Oh my God, Liev.
Okay.
What fucking difference does it make if there's another idea that adds something to the universe or not? Here's the thing you're not understanding. When I got you to the point where you admitted that the very thing you were pointing to that you said brought meaning could not bring meaning, you then went to, does anything bring meaning? Which means you're a liar and you're lying to yourself, because you are claiming shut up. You are claiming that your pantheism adds meaning, and then when we drill down to what meaning does it add, you say none, and then you say, can anything add meaning? You are a waste of conversation, Liev.
You're going in circles. I don't think you really know what you believe, and I think it's become pretty clear.
I'm sorry that you're confused, genuinely, but we just spent 27 minutes dancing around your parade of, I'm desperate to find meaning somewhere. Let me find it in pantheism, even though I'll admit it can't come from pantheism, and maybe there's no meaning anywhere. Go put the bong down, put down the religious texts. Don't ever listen to people like Jordan Peterson, because you will gullibly fall for whatever they're engaged in. Stop. Just enjoy your life and look for
your
truth.
Own meaning. Yeah, live your life, make your own meaning. You don't need to find it in some religious text or some weird idea of what you think God might be. That's my advice to you. But we're going to let you go. It's been long enough.
Okay.
Thanks for the call, Liev. Bye-bye.
I called for a critical explanation of my theory.
Nope. We're done. I had quite enough of that. What'd you learn there, Matt? Anything?
No.
I
learned some things about Liev, and it's fine. And I learned that, once again,
he doesn't know what he believes.
People who are flailing around, desperate to find meaning, will find it. Desperate to find purpose, will find it, even in places where they admit there can be no meaning or purpose. And then when pushed down to the point where they're about to be forced to address their own dishonesty, they will question the very nature of reality itself before they acknowledge that they're full of shit.
Yeah, that really got confusing. Well, let's go to another call. We've got Will, him in North Carolina. You're on the line. What could we do for you, Will?
Hey, Will.
Hey, guys. It's so good to talk with you guys today. I've been listening for years and started as a Christian years ago. Wasn't a big fan of you guys, to be honest, especially you, Matt. To tell you my story, at 15 years old, I was a Southern Baptist. I was cornered by my pastor and deacons and was told that they sensed the calling of God in my life. I preached for several years, became a pastor, and what have you. Spent 4 years as a pastor of a small church, and 2 years into that pastorate, realized that my doubts were too big to answer. Even though I was a student at Braxton Hunter's non-accredited Trinity Bible College, getting an apologetics degree, I was unable to answer my doubts, and I became an atheist. I served for 2 more years as a pastor as an atheist because I felt trapped. And through the Clergy Project, where I was able to interact with you some, Dave, under a fake name for safety purposes, I became free and just totally changed my life, found joy and peace. Then I had a crisis of meaning with nihilism, became very depressed. And then after reading Jean-Paul Sartre and existentialism, really found my joy and really found intellectual peace. But now I find that my struggle has been mostly emotional. I live here in the Bible Belt, here in North Carolina, though I've moved to a much larger city than where I'm from. And I've built a life here. I've got a new job. I've got good friends. I'm living openly. But unfortunately, I'm being priced out, and I'm having to move back home to my family to live with them for a while. They don't like me very much, to be honest. And it's really given me a hard time because I've been able to live honestly, be open here. When I go home and I try to be a little more open about, what I'm doing, because people see me, they want to know, why aren't you preaching? Why aren't you a pastor? I will say I didn't stand up behind the pulpit and make it known that I was an atheist. I told all my loved ones and all my friends. I didn't make it a secret, but I also didn't feel the need to broadcast my, private life. But so I found meaning intellectually. I don't really have any doubts there, and we'll never go back. And I'm just wondering how to be authentic and how not to let them shame me, because I find sometimes that my mother especially, I love her so much, but she texted me just today some sappy Instagram thing about, finding God and forgiving God and all this such, nonsense. And having to move in and live with them for a while I get back on my feet from how ministry, demolished my financial life, being a small town pastor. I'm just wondering how to talk to them without being an asshole, because it seems like anytime that I try to lovingly push back, I'm always the asshole.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You're talking to 2 guys who have those experiences with our family members too, to some degree. I've got a sweet little mom who loves Jesus, and she's very disappointed and upset about my lack of belief. I was formerly a believer for many years, many of those years a pastor. And my family is all still Christian, and they don't like my atheism. So how to navigate that is difficult. I mean, it depends upon, like you said, how hostile they can get with you or will get with you, how honest you can be with them, and what that's going to cost you. It depend. All that is depending on everybody's situation is different. It could, if they're allowing you to be honest and be yourself, that's one thing. If they're not, and they're putting pressure on you to conform to their ideas because you happen to live with them or because you're around them, then you're going to have to navigate you're going to have to reach some kind of a compromise for there to be any kind of peace. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I've tried. I mean, anybody who's watched me do these shows, there are times where I will exercise more patience than probably anybody I know of. And then there are times where it seems like I lose my patience immediately. And both of those cases can make you look like an asshole. I walked on eggshells and treated my parents with kind of kid gloves for the first few years of this, despite things that they said and did. Oh yeah, I'm getting ready to nuke you in just a minute there, Crowman. Sit there and wait. My interactions with my family put me in a position where somebody's likely to think that I'm being an asshole, when in reality, if you talk to them and you get down to it, as long as people are willing to hold up their side of the conversation, not make assumptions, not pretend like this jackass in chat that they can get inside your head or that they have a psychological understanding of who you are and what you're thinking and what you're doing, that's where the asshole stuff starts. I don't think anybody can point to any situation. It may have happened. It's possible I could have been in a bad mood at, someday, but I don't think there's ever been a situation where by the time I got to where somebody thought I was being an asshole, that they hadn't actually been some sort of asshole first, either by making assumptions about me and my mind and what I believe and who I am and all of that, or going with their de facto, I'm right, you're wrong, let me talk down to you. God has given you over to a reprobate mind and blah, blah, blah. It is, I try to make sure people get as good as they give. And that includes my blood relatives, because I a long time ago decided that I don't need people in my life who are toxic and who are causing problems for me. And I don't care if they're related or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems that everyone around here, again, I'm here in the very rural North Carolina, there's a strong persecution complex because, funnily enough, I'm not the one who's bringing up religion most of the time. It's always them. They're almost obsessed with it. I try to move on. As an atheist, I'm kind of traded my theology geekdom for philosophy. I enjoy philosophy, but I don't spend much time really dealing with the apologist types anymore because it's kind of a waste of time.
Yeah.
But for instance, my older brother, here's an example of what I'm dealing with. My older brother is a Reformed Baptist, and he is in seminary. He makes my three nieces and nephews at their dinner table every day as they say their prayers and do their little culty stuff they do. I mean, and I don't say that lightly. They're in a church that is very much cult-like. He makes them pray for me by name that God will destroy me, that he will either make me repent or he will destroy me and gain glory from that. He's a hardcore Calvinist, and it's made it really hard to even be an uncle. My nieces and nephews, and I mean they're all under 6 years old, and it's just interesting that, and it's so tied up with politics as well. I am very, I consider myself to be very progressive politically, and no surprise, they're all very hard right wing gun toting people. It's just very interesting that. That just trying to live honestly and be myself, that it seems to piss everybody off so much. I wonder if it's threatening to them, the fact that I simply have
it's very threatening. Yeah, I came to that conclusion with my family pretty quickly because they didn't want to really engage with me in an honest way. They would, like Matt said, talk down or try to fix me, or condescendingly tell me that they wish, I would come back to God because they're sad for me. And when I say to them that I'm okay like I am, I'm very happy. Like my mom, for instance, she would say, I'm very sad, Dave, that you're not loving Jesus. And I would say, really, I'm happy. I'm really happy, Mom. Don't you want me to be happy? And I'm satisfied with how I am. I don't. And she said, you can't be if you're not in the kingdom of God. And I said, well, we'll just have to disagree. And we move on. If they can't allow you to disagree and to be who you are, and they want to continue to try to hammer that, I mean, that what your brother's doing with his children is really not good and very toxic. And I wouldn't be around that. I wouldn't come around that. I would tell him that's not an environment that I'm going to be in, because I don't want to partake in that. You have the right to be who you are, and if your family doesn't like it, that's their problem, not yours.
Yeah,
and we
absolutely.
don't choose our family. And so you shouldn't feel any obligation.
Huh? I do now.
You shouldn't feel any obligation to please them or to acquiesce to their demands. If they don't like the life you're living, that's their problem, not yours. And I think they're very threatened.
Sorry, Dave.
No, I just think they're very threatened because you left the faith, and in the back of their minds, there's this thought that if it could happen to you, it could happen to them.
That is very likely the case. In my thing, it's I don't run around telling people day to day whether they're family or blood relatives or not And by the way, I like the family that I've chosen in many cases more than the family that I was just kind of born into. Um, and I'm a big fan of what Jen People said years ago, that you're family when you act like family, and it has nothing to do with blood relations. And that's really especially true because I have a niece and a nephew who are adopted, who are awesome, and I love them dearly. Even when I vehemently disagree with one of them, I don't tell them how to live their life. And one of the things that, my brother and I are very close, as most of you know. And he's probably watching right now. But one of the things that we talked about early on when my nephew was adopted was, I want to be honest with them. And so if they come to me and they're like, "Hey, Uncle Matt, why don't you go to church?" I'm going to let them know, because I don't believe that. And I'm always going to direct them back to also, that people disagree with me and that their parents may or may not, and they can have those conversations, because I don't want to lie to them. And I'd rather never lie to anybody. I realize I haven't gone quite as far as Sam Harris, and even Sam seems to have backed off of that a little bit, in that there may actually be some lies where I think that there are moral situations where lying is absolutely required in order to maintain any hint of morality. But when it comes to my folks, who are really all that's left, my aunts and uncles, we don't interact a lot. There's a couple of them that I get along with great, even though we didn't talk to each other for years because of other drama in the family, and one individual in the family who is a drama queen and a liar who created a rift between family members over nothing, or over something that's not real. I interact with them off and on, but it's always, and it's not just surface level. We care about things beyond the weather, and we genuinely care about each other. The difference is they're not trying to convert me or talk shit at me for not believing, and I'm not trying to deconvert them, nor am I trying to talk shit at them for believing. And once we got to that point, it was fine. And it also, things changed for the better, because if you're at a Christmas gathering and my dad or somebody gets up to pray, then you stand there quietly and you let people pray and observe, and that's fine. But all those times when people would be, and you probably may have experienced this as well, Will, where you'd be sitting around with the family and they'll be talking about the wonderful work that God's doing in their life, or the trials, how Satan really came after them, and that's how they knew they were right with the Lord and all this other stuff. Those conversations stopped happening around me the second they realized I was not going to sit there and shut my mouth. As soon as they realized I was going to openly and honestly ask questions for how do they know this, how can they demonstrate this, those conversations stopped around me.
What do you think, Will?
That I want to mention, I agree. I think that's something that I've dealt with quite a bit. My mom always tries to, if I tell her how good things are going at work, or I tell her how, I try to, let them know I'm doing okay. They always attribute it to God, and there's always a bit of gaslighting there. But there's one more thing. I don't want to take all your time up, but to kind of share with you that I've sort of been dealing with is I have a bit of mental health struggles. Deal with depression and some other things. And like I said, the church paid me less than $20,000, and my expenses for doing ministry, driving to hospitals and such, exceeded that. So I went in debt thinking that, God would provide. I find that I'm almost having to hide my struggles, because any time that I share how I'm doing, they immediately point that to the fact that that's God judging me, or God, or the only reason that I'm not happy, or the only reason that I'm struggling is that I'm living in sin. And I have to be honest, it takes everything I have not to not go off on my sweet little mom, or my very loving dad. And I'm just wondering if you guys have any advice on what to do with that. Because as I go home,
Yes.
I mentioned that I take antidepressants, and they shame me for that. I've tried to be open about my journey for, trying to find wholeness, and I've just been gaslit and sort of manipulated in a way. And as I said, I'm a little more of a submissive person. I'm not very confrontational, so I end up sitting there being quiet, and then I walk away feeling like I didn't do a good job of standing up for myself. And also, just being a good influence on them, sort of a good ambassador for atheists, because a lot of them, I'm the only open atheist they know. So to me, it's personal, to be true to myself, but also to not to make atheists look bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Matt? I think you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah. Some of this you're probably not going to like, Will. And that is push back. You have to learn to set boundaries. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with you saying, look, I'm dealing with a lot, and you guys either love and support me or you don't. But if you're going to keep coming at me with how this is all because I no longer believe in God or God's punished me, then you're an asshole, and so is the God you believe in. And I don't need either one of you commenting on my life while I'm trying to put things back together. Standing up for yourself and setting boundaries once may get them to stop doing this, so that it doesn't have to be a constant state of conflict. Because if the reality is, if this is the shit they will say to your face, what are they saying behind your back? For a fact, just like I know for a fact, I know because I've heard about it from other family members, about which one of my family members are talking shit about me at any given time. And the fact that they're too cowardly and too weak in their understanding of reality, science, epistemology, reason, and their own religion, they know they're not equipped to actually have the conversation with me. And that is their own fears that are manifesting. I'm not particularly submissive, but I am a giver, and I let people take advantage of me. I let people take advantage of me for long periods of time and to ridiculous lengths on occasion, in part because of how I was raised. I had to learn when to set boundaries, and I used to do the 3 strikes thing. I don't give people 3 strikes anymore. It's 2 strikes. I just set a new limit. You screw me over, you betray me, you pull some bullshit at me, try to exert your power and authority over to control my life twice, we're done. But the first time it happens, I'm going to kind of let it pass. The second time, I'm going to let you know that there will be no third strike that you get. Anything after that is done. Now, that's not necessarily for you, and it's not necessarily for everybody else. But, when you start talking about how you've dealt with this or failed to deal with it in the past, you need to stand up for yourself, but also you need to get away from them. And I don't mean separate yourself from your family and don't talk to your family forever. I mean, what I mean is you need a support group and a community network outside of your family. Otherwise, you will just be the piñata.
Mm-hmm. And there's ways to push back and advocate for yourself that are less confrontational than others. For instance, if they were to say that to me, saying that God is judging me because of my struggles and my failures, then I would simply say to them, so any negative thing that happens to you, is God judging you? Well, why does that not apply to you if you're going to apply it to me? And they'll understand.
I'm going to bet they'd say it is God judging them.
Well, it may be. Then clean up your own house first.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't come at me. Get your own shit together and then come fix me. But Matt's right. You got to push back a little bit, Will, because they will continue to beat you around, and you don't need that. And I understand you're in a situation where you kind of have to be there for now, but as much as you can, speak up for yourself and recognize that you have a right to live your own life on your own terms, and that no one has the right to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. And that's God, and that's your parents, and that's your siblings, and that's anybody. Do not feel bad about defending your position, because you have every right to have that position. Okay?
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I found that even some atheists that I've talked to kind of use the old "ask your mom, ask your dad." You should you just suck it up and deal with that. So I appreciate hearing that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like the emotional side of things, the toughest part, dealing with people. As a Star Trek fan, I do find myself agreeing that sometimes hell is other people. And I do appreciate you guys. I won't hold your time anymore. I will just say again, thank you for everything, Matt. You've taught me how to think, and Dave, you and all the other guys in the Clergy Project have literally saved my life. I appreciate y'all.
Awesome.
And talk to you another time. Thank you.
Hang in there, buddy. Thanks for calling.
Take care.
Okay, well, bye-bye. That's a tough spot. Let's go to, I hope to say this right, Yarun in the Netherlands, he, him. Yarun, you're on the line. What can we do for you? Thanks for
Good.
holding. We appreciate you
Yeah,
hanging
that's
in there
fine.
so long.
No, that's fine. I'm still jet lagged, so I'm on Curacao time, Caribbean time. So to me, it's 8:15 in the evening. So I'm not.
Okay.
It's not like I'm sitting here red-eyed. I called from Curacao the last time on was it when Matt was still on the other show regarding person who lost their faith because I quite without meaning to deconverted them. Oh, that's not true. That person was already doubting. I was like the stick of dynamite that triggered the avalanche early. But I don't know if you remember, Matt, but this was the person who thought that Yoko Ono was a convincing evidence of the existence of God.
Mm.
That
Okay.
that I don't remember it clearly.
No, yeah, but yeah, it's just that at some point in 1969 or something, the Beatles said they were bigger than Jesus, and then Yoko Ono showed up to pull them apart. But that's obviously nonsense because it took over 6 months for John Lennon to meet Yoko Ono, and then the Beatles didn't break up in 1974. So an omnipotent and omniscient God would have a more efficient way of breaking up the Beatles out of jealousy. But okay, that's
Oh, well.
that's not relevant. Yeah.
Yeah.
That the reason I'm calling today is this same person. I feel somewhat responsible for her because I'm part of the reason she deconverted. Just like the previous caller, this person had a nihilistic phase, but and that's what I called Matt about. And I think it was also Dawn. Dawn was hosting the show. But she's over the nihilistic phase. But now she's facing a new problem in her. Let's say, your journey towards, you can't really open atheism, practicing atheism. Well, atheism is not a religion, so you can't practice it. But she's been having trouble. How do I put this? English is not my first language. Hold on. Let me put it together in my. Okay, she was having trouble, kind of deciding how to behave. In social situations where people are dead or dying, because part of the reason she had a lot of trouble with her with her deconversion is that she lost a loved one to a very, very lengthy and slow-moving disease, a tumor, brain tumor that was inoperable, but that grew very slow. And she consoled herself with the fact that she would see this person again in heaven. And when she lost her religion, the grieving process was undone. And I spoke to Matt about this a second time during a second call, and Shannon was the co-host then. And I spoke to this to an atheist sounding board of mine. I'm not neurotypical. I have Asperger's, but I have a neurotypical person who's my sounding board who teaches me how to behave and how to respond in certain situations. And I objected to the assertion that a grieving process is not real if God is involved. I agree that it's not real, but my disagreement is purely semantic. But thankfully, Matt and Shannon gave me some information that allowed me to come up with a position. My position now is that an atheist grieving process is superior to a religious one because, it's one less thing that can, losing your religion would be one less thing that makes your grieving process unravel. But I sidetracked again, sorry. So yeah, how would an atheist, my question is, what can I tell her about responding to social situations where somebody is dead or dying as an atheist, because you can't really say if they know you're an atheist, you can't really say you're going to a better place or any of those platitudes. I'm sure the two of you have dealt with such situations in some form or another. So can you give me some feedback on what I can say? Because I honestly, what I told her is the only reason I still go to church is for funerals. And she asks me why if I don't believe in God. I say, well, I don't believe in God, but I do believe that the next of kin or the deceased's next of kin exist, and I'm going to support them in their moment of grief. So believing in God is not necessary, but she is she's a much more recent atheist, and she's still squeamish about going to church and dealing with those situations. So maybe you guys can shed some light on this for me. Will what I said have to suffice, or can you add something to it?
Your question is about coping with impending death as an atheist instead of having a view of an afterlife or something beyond the grave, correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I don't, that shouldn't be that difficult. We don't have to have an assumption. I know a lot of people do have an assumption that there's something beyond the grave, but there's no evidence of that. And so I deal with this question all the time as a person, as an atheist living with a terminal disease, that people ask me, what do I think is going to happen after I die? And I don't know. I don't think anything. I think I'm going to go to sleep and not wake up. But to have to deal with death as an atheist is actually simpler than it is as a Christian or a believer, because I don't have to answer any of the questions or come up with answers that I don't have. Christians are having to come up with answers they don't really have when it comes to death and what's after death. So that's what I would tell your friend. Just approach it in the simplest of terms. You have a life, and it's going to end, and when it ends, it will be over. And you don't have to know what's beyond that. It doesn't matter. You won't be aware of it.
Yeah, to me, I remember when my mom's dad died, my maternal grandfather died. I didn't cry, and I know he had suffered for quite a while, and I was happy that his suffering was over. I wasn't happy that he was gone, but also I didn't cry. I also didn't cry when my grandmother died, and she was one of my favorite people ever. I don't think I cried then either. But I remember having a conversation with my mom, asking, am I weird? And yes, I know I did a whole show about whether or not I am or I'm not somewhere on the spectrum. But I was worried that there was something wrong. And what I realized is that I wasn't crying because I had already come to terms with the fact that he was going to die. I was at peace with the fact that he was not going to continue living. And I think that if we taught everyone that death is an inevitable part of life, that not only would we, to borrow a phrase from Penn Jillette, treat each other right the first time instead of waiting for an afterlife to do it, but that death would come as less of a blow to us because it would be something that we've prepared for. And so for me, when someone I care about has suffered the death of another person, what do I focus on? Well, funerals aren't for the dead, they're for the living. Mm-hmm. And you can make it a funeral, like, let's have a funeral. That's not for everybody. Let's turn the funeral into a fun thing. Let's have a celebration of life. It's become so cliched when you hear this celebration of life thing that it just makes me kind of kind of gag a little bit. But I understand what they're doing, and it's not for me. And so if somebody I love lost a loved one, then my only duty is to say, I'm very sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do to help? That's it. I love you. I care about you. I'm sorry that you're going through this. Death is one of not necessarily the worst, but one of the worst things that can happen in a life. I would argue that prolonged agonizing suffering makes death a relief. It's one of the reasons why Dave and I both support death with dignity and things like that. But my duty to them as a person is to say, I love you. I'm sorry you're going through this. Are there needs that aren't being met that I might be able to assist you with? And if that need is nothing more than a hug or a shoulder to cry on, or a tissue, or making a meal, or watching somebody's kids while they take care of something else, I fail to see what valuable thing any person could ask for or do beyond that. The rest of it's all just play acting.
Mm-hmm. Conjecture. Yeah.
Yeah, and which I'm not good at, play acting. I'm
Mhm.
better at faking being neurotypical than most, but every now and then I still slip up, so to speak. No, your input is very valuable. Yeah, my own grandmother died. She was 96, but she had Alzheimer's, and for the last 5 years, she was nonverbal and she was slowly wasting away. So when she passed, I felt relief because she was no longer suffering. I mean, lying on the bed, having your diaper changed and just being fed, and slowly your muscles slowly atrophying. That's no way to live.
Mhm.
And I'm also cool with the concept of assisted life ending or suicide, if you want to use that term. And where I'm at right now in the Netherlands, they recently passed legislation to make it easier, not just if you have terminal illness, but also if psychologists and psychiatrists have, they agree that your psychological suffering is basically making your life unbearable. Not so much though where I live on Curacao. They're kind of conservative, and but okay, that's a different discussion. It irritates me because they use God to justify not legalizing gay marriage. I mean, the motherland, Curacao is part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but the individual countries still have their own jurisdictions. So the Netherlands cannot force gay marriage onto the Caribbean parts of the kingdom, which are more conservative. But okay, that's a different discussion. I'm not going into
Different
that.
discussion.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for your input. It was useful, believe it or not.
Good.
But yeah, I think my friend is still in the anxiety phase, and yeah, she needs to either get over that or seek therapy. But that's not something I can help her with. But she's just still in the, in the anxiety phase of atheism. Not a phase I ever went through, but neurotypical atheists do have that problem, or so I've heard. But anyway, thanks. It was useful. I'll take what you said. Will the show be posted online at some point? Recorded and posted online?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
online right now. And yes,
Yep.
the recording will be posted live. It's
Okay,
live,
then
and then the recording will be posted.
I will rewatch it, and then I will come up with something I can tell my friend. Thanks a lot, and have a good day.
Thanks,
Sure,
Yarun.
thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay, we've got time for a couple more callers quickly, so we don't run too long tonight. We're going to go to Mary, she, her in Florida. You're on the line. What can we help you with?
Hi, Matt and Dave.
Hi, Mary.
My husband and I are getting ready to, we're in our early 60s. We're getting ready to write up our will. And I know we need to check the laws in Florida for death with dignity. I guess they vary, but I'm not sure. And maybe Dave, you can help me. Does death with dignity conflict with hospice care?
Well, it depends on what you mean by death with dignity. Florida doesn't have a law that is physician-assisted dying, if that's what you mean. There are only like 10 states that offer anything like that, and they're patterned after one that originated in Oregon. Hospice care, you can put together what they call advanced directives or living wills that will give people definite direction on what you do or don't want for your medical care. Our new nonprofit that we're starting, I Am Dying Out Loud, is working on putting together advanced directives for your quote unquote spiritual health care as well, or your emotional health care, so that you can actually dictate what you do or don't want in terms of chaplain care or anybody putting any kind of religious influence into your healthcare process. Oftentimes, people are experiencing unwanted religious overreach in that process, and so we're working to produce documents that you can give to your healthcare providers, whether it's a hospital or a hospice care facility or anything, that not only dictates what you want or don't want in your medical care, but also what you don't want or want in your spiritual care. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I don't want any. I'm an atheist. I don't want any, Christian anything there with that. But I had to. My mom suffered the ravages of Alzheimer's, and having to watch her take 5 days to slowly die, and I had a friend there with me, and they would just inject her with morphine every 4 hours, and this went on for 5 days, and I kept telling my friend, why don't, this sounds horrible, I'm trying not to cry, why can't they just give her a triple dose and because it's inevitable, why not, why can't they just do a double or triple dose and let her go? It was excruciating for that process, and I don't want to go through that. I don't want to see my husband go through that. I don't want my son to see us go through that for days and days of putting off the inevitable. So that's why I don't know where hospice conflicts.
Oftentimes they will. Sometimes some compassionate healthcare workers will actually. I know for my my stepdad, they did increase the morphine because it was a compassionate thing to do. They're probably not supposed to, and they probably would never tell you they did. But I know of many cases where they do because it's the right thing to do, and the doctor knows it.
Right. And you can't tell them to do that. It's like they could charge you with.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we go to our attorney and write up our will and all that, and then I'm sorry, tell me again your organization you're starting, because I will certainly contribute and.
Yes, it's called I Am Dying Out Loud. It's the website is iamdyingoutloud.org. There'll be a link to it in the show description here, and you can find it that way easily. And you can find more about what we're doing. Also, there will be help. We're just in the beginning stages of it, so it's not all together there yet. But we'll help people construct their living wills so that at least you can tell them, I don't want any extreme measures taken to keep me alive. And oftentimes they can interpret that as meaning if a little extra dose of morphine will help expedite things, then please do so. Now, they can't specifically say that because in most states that's not legal. And I'm sure that, well, I know Florida's going to be the last one probably that has anything like that available.
Don't get me started on DeSantis.
Yeah.
Hey, he's going to announce his presidency tomorrow, I'm told.
Yeah, how exciting.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, he wants to turn the United States into what he's done to Florida. No, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, speaking of politics, why is Trump even a possible candidate? It's like, give me a break.
Yeah,
and he
let's
can run
get
from
started on that. We don't have enough
Right.
show to do that. But I'm glad. I'm proud of you and your husband for taking advanced measures here, because that's what everyone needs to do, and not let the process take itself where it goes. You have to take control of these things. So I really applaud you guys for doing that.
Yeah. My dad, he died 4 years before my mom, and he had a massive heart attack and was more or less dead before he hit the ground. So his was a shock, sort of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then my mom's suffering so long for 5 days, and but I appreciate that, and I will certainly check into that.
Yeah.
Are you working on, if I may ask, Dave, are you working on getting something into for national legislation, or is this just more of a medical, legal?
More of a
Correct.
medical / spiritual, for lack of a better term, emotional health care, so that people don't have unwanted religious intrusion in that process, and helping people advocate for their health care. We're not going to get into the trying to pass laws in different states for medical aid in dying like they have in Canada. There are other groups that are already doing that and doing it quite well, so we don't need to duplicate their efforts. We're certainly in harmony with them, and we agree with that concept. And I wish it were a nationwide policy, as it is in Canada, that you can have a medical aid in dying for terminally ill people, because it is the compassionate thing to do. Sadly, I
Yes.
think we're a long way from that in this country, based upon what I'm seeing now and the direction that we're going. But it's more so on an individual basis, helping people advocate for their positions in that regard, as well as a policy and procedure position for hospitals and medical facilities, trying to get policies in place that give people the protection from unwanted religious overreach.
Okay. I mean, I've always been a dog owner, and my dogs live to be between 15 and 19 years old, and they die with more dignity.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
I've often said we treat our pets better than we do our people in this country, and it's a sad situation. I'm sorry for what happened to your mom, and I hope you and your husband get things in place so that things are better when it comes to that time for you.
Yeah, and just to help our adult son, take some of the burden off him too.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. So, I wanted to ask you. I think you were in Tallahassee a few weeks ago, and then I think you may have stayed in Gulf Shores or Orange Beach. Were you in that area?
I was. You're very correct. I was in Gulf Shores, kind of a vacation time, and then spoke to a group in Tallahassee shortly after that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. It's called the Redneck Riviera.
Yeah, for a reason.
Did you go to Floribama?
Oh, yeah. You got to do Floribama if you're down there.
Yeah,
Matt,
you do.
you'll have to do that next time with us.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been down there a handful of times. I loved going down there. I know we haven't booked for next year yet because there's a bunch of other stuff going on. But yeah, it's the other thing is it's harder and harder for me to take any vacation or anything else. So like in November, well, let's let Mary go before I talk about what my schedule is.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to meet y'all if you're ever in, the Floribama area, because I'm nearby, and that would be awesome. But
keep up with the schedule. I post my schedule pretty much, or my calendar, and kind of everywhere. Everyone knows where I am all the time. I've got no privacy.
Yeah, I'm friends with you on Facebook, and I saw you post a picture, and I said, I recognize those sugar white sands.
Oh, yeah. No place like it.
Beautiful beaches.
Well, thanks for the call, Mary. You take care.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye, Matt and Dave.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mary. Thanks so much.
Matt, you think we'd take one more?
I got time for one more. Yeah, I was going to say in November, I'm going on. I'm the guest on the Black Non-Believers cruise.
Oh, yeah.
I agreed to this a year or so ago, and I'm happy to go, happy to do it. So Mandy's doesn't need to freak out or anything. But I had no idea that it was like an 8 or 9 day thing. It's like a 5-day cruise with some extra stuff on each side plus travel. And Arden and I are both going to go, but it's like there's 57 snakes here and a bunch of other reptiles, plus the rats and mice and all that stuff that, we've got to find somebody who can take care of them during that time. It may be that because of the hobby / business that we've started, Arden and I, this might be the last year we get to do any sort of vacationing together, which We're going to find a way because, God damn it,
Just
I'm
go to
going on
Snake
vacation
Sitters.
with that woman, no matter what anybody says. But
Just go to snakesitters.com. You'll have people come watch your snakes and rats and things.
I'm trying to make friends with as many people at herp conventions as I can so they can just come over and watch my stuff while I'm gone.
Well, real quick, we want to take MTD from Alabama, he, him. You're on the line with Matt and Dave. We've just got a few minutes left. What can we do for you?
Gentlemen, how are you all doing this evening?
Fine.
Doing well.
Okay. Well, basically, it goes like this. I'm an atheist. I don't hide the fact that I'm an atheist. I live in Alabama. You know the story about Alabama Bible Belt.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I've had a few people there who had decided to talk to me about religion and everything like this when they found out I'm an atheist. And that goes really well. And then when they decide I'm going to tell you things, and afterwards, you're going to be a Christian afterwards. And I keep looking at them going, you realize I used to be Catholic, right? That puts a damper on their little thing. But anyway, there's a guy I work with, and he's taken it upon himself to save my soul. Annoying as that is. And we've had discussions, and I've keep bringing up certain things about the Bible here and there. Two topics I really hate that they try to use is original sin and Pascal's wager. And finally, after working down, he got there and mentioned something about, we were talking, and he said, well, what difference does it make if I believe, if I'm a good guy and I do really good things, and what difference does it make if I believe in this or not? And I turned around and looked at him and I said, simple, because you make inhumane actions based on your belief.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I have a niece that's trans. We worked with somebody who was a lesbian. He's against all that.
Yeah.
And I kept pointing out that, hey, these are human beings. What difference does it make? What difference does it make if you believe something that could be very untrue? I said, you go against these human beings who deserve to be treated with the same respect that you want. You do inhumane actions against people like this.
Okay.
He kind of looked at me and wasn't sure what to do. And after a while, he just no longer, it took me, this happened a couple weeks ago. He doesn't really talk to me much now.
Mm-hmm.
After I pointed that out.
Well, what can we help you with
I
tonight?
say?
I mean, what can we help you with tonight? We're about out of time, so I just kind of want to jump to the case here.
How do I? Well, it's basically it's. Could I have approached that differently without?
I think you approached it right. If you got him to quit bothering you, you approached it pretty well.
Yep.
Problem solved. You're not going to change his mind if that's what you're thinking. So just if your response got him to quit hassling you, then the problem's solved.
Hey, MTD, can you see chat right now?
No, I can't.
Okay. Well, I just posted a link in chat.
I'm using my iPad.
I just posted a link in chat to my video on Pascal's wager, which your pre-written topic had addressed. And I don't know if that's going to be of any use to you, but it's closing in on 300,000 views. So it might be valuable the next time somebody presents Pascal's wager so that you have maybe an alternate version to address it. But if somebody's bugging you and the conversation got them to hopefully think, but at least stop bugging you, then I don't know that there's anything else to do or necessarily any better way to do it. Each situation is going to be different.
Yeah. Check out Matt's video.
I was
that's a good
just
one.
trying to. Okay. I was just wondering maybe how I came off was a little too strong, but
You need to talk to that person, not me.
Mm-mm. Advocate for yourself. You don't have to apologize for pushing back against someone's claim against you. You don't have to apologize for that, so don't feel bad about it. Okay.
I don't feel bad, but anyway, thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah, check
Cool.
out Matt's video. That's going to be helpful for you.
Thanks,
Oh.
MTV.
Okay, he's gone. Yeah, we had to run it. We had to cut that short. We're about out of time here.
Yeah.
So let's do some super chats. What do you think, Matt? You got time for that?
I got all the time that you got, Dave.
That's my man. Well, you take the first one.
Sweet. 1999 from Greg Markowski, who's almost always first on every one of our shows and is just hot fucking buttered awesome. Greg says, thanks for the great show. Damn it, Jimmy, you keep getting great guest hosts to compel us to give more. I will resist the temptation. No, Greg, you didn't resist the temptation. You donated just like normal. And I bet if I talk shit at you for a little bit, you might donate again because this guest was just the best. Like the hottest. Oh, wait, no, you're not the guest. I'm the guest. Never mind. This guest was terrible. I'm doing so many shows, I forget when I'm the guest and when I'm not.
Thanks, Greg. You rock. Look at there. 1999 from, you knew he would do that. 1999 from Greg Markowski again. I failed and gave in to temptation. Here's some more money. Yeah, you sinned, Greg. Sorry.
$5 from Cardinal Sin. Good to see you both here. The Dynamic Duo, my two favorite host guests. Always a great show. Thanks to you both for all the great show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cardinal Sin. Dave and I are a pretty damn good team.
We are, man. $9.99 from Don Wanderley. When will atheists be vindicated, or will that never happen?
Happens every day. As religiosity declines and the religious advocates become so embarrassingly, obviously awful, both in their ideas and values and in their ability to defend those ideas and values, atheism and atheists are vindicated every day. The trend is towards less religiosity. What you're seeing in the loud attacks on atheists, on the LGBT community, when you've got the MAGA crowd and all this, these are the dying, flailing gasps of the dragon that has already been slayed.
Yep. And like this call today and one last week we had, the callers almost always cave in on themselves. Their arguments cave in on themselves. If you talk with them long enough, they enter themselves and reveal how horrible their arguments are. You almost don't even have to just let them talk themselves into a hole.
Just ask questions.
Yeah.
Let them pull the mask off themselves. And then the key thing to remember is as soon as the mask slips, go, hey, what's that? Hey, what's that? When the mask starts slipping, it's, hey, what's that? And when the mask comes off, it's, aha, there it is. You just said that you cared about truth, but you don't care about a path to truth. You just said that you find more meaning in theism, but the theism you're advocating, you just admitted can't lead to meaning. Leave them there. You're not the one doing harm to them. Their religious ideas and their failed critical thinking skills are the ones that are doing harm to them, not you.
Yep. That's issue.
$4.99 from the Raven 200. I've been told by believers that my deceased loved ones will forget about me in the afterlife if I don't accept Christ as Lord before I die. Baffling. Cool.
That's baffling. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get that either.
It's
nothing I'm going to worry about. I promise you I'm not going to worry about that.
It's a way around a problem that I pointed out. I argued that there can't be any heaven, and my mom is proof of this. Because in heaven there can be no sorrow. And if I go to hell and my mom goes to heaven, then my mom cannot possibly be in heaven because there's no sorrow in heaven, and my mom will always experience sorrow that I'm in hell, which means that whatever is in heaven isn't really my mom. It's some doppelganger facsimile that has had the mother love module removed from her head, or her brain has been wiped, which makes her not her, or she is sad and the heaven that people have been advocating for is a lie, or none of that shit is true, and this is the desperate flailings of people who are terrified of dealing in a world without the people they love.
Yep. None of that makes sense on the surface. $10 from Dr. Ben. Thank you, Ben. So excited to see Dave with his own show on the line. Back it in, bitch. Private joke. But thank you, Ben. I'm happy. I'm excited to be on the line too. It's we're having fun.
I did discover something fun. And so, Ben, you are allowed to have alcohol at my house, but you're not allowed to have alcohol while riding in my car, or to ride in my car after having alcohol.
Oh, there you go. Whatever that means.
Ben will know what that means.
Ben had a great vacation.
I figured he did, yeah.
666 Canadian from Gam Paradis. Dave, I need to say, I probably butchered your name too, sorry. Dave, I need to say your story helped me a lot dealing with the loss of both my parents, my mom in 2021 and my dad in 2022. Thank you out loud. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you out loud. That's got to be something you co-opt.
Yeah, thanking you out loud. I love that. I appreciate that. I'm sorry for the loss of your parents. Wow, that's tough back to back like that.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that anything I said or did is helpful. So thank you for saying that. Means a lot. $4.99 from Claire. How do I explain to theists that the burden of proof is on them? Just tell them it is. They're the ones making the claim. That simple.
It is, but that can be difficult because many of them have this kind of de facto, everybody believes in God, or everybody knows there's a God, or God has been the de facto standard, that now the burden of proof is shifted to atheists must prove it wrong. And I find that the best thing to do is to ask them about all the other gods that they don't believe in. Ask them, why is your God the one that doesn't have a burden of proof? All those other gods that you don't believe in them in part because they failed to meet their burden of proof. And honestly, once you get them to the point where they're addressing the fact that they probably haven't investigated any of those gods, what you'll find is that someone will be like, well, they're all describing God, but from a slightly different perspective. And now they've made a claim about God. And the second they've made a claim about God, you're not saying they're wrong. You're asking them to demonstrate that they're right. There can be no burden of proof on me saying, how can you show that you're correct? Please show me you're correct. Show me you're correct. And I'm with you. It takes a little work to dig through the assumptions because most of them don't understand what a burden of proof is, but you can demonstrate it by saying, prove to me you're not a rapist. Prove to me you're not a murderer. Prove to me you're not a thief. And by the way, I screwed up mildly on the last episode of the Sunday show, and I hung up on somebody just a little bit too quick because Jimmy had the perfect answer. When people were calling in what became the cis version of the Transatlantic Call-In show to, why should I believe someone when they say they're trans? Okay, why should I believe you when you say you're cis? That's the response. And all of us, I'm going to have to do a video about this. All of us need to think in those terms all the time about whether or not you're accepting a false premise. When somebody's like, why don't I have the right to know this? Well, why should you have the right to know this? Oh, well, why should I respect somebody else's pronouns? Okay, why should we respect yours? And what you'll find is that some of them will double down in the same way and say, well, I don't care if you respect my pronouns. Yes, that's because you're probably a cishet white male who is not going to be bothered by the fact that somebody called you a little girl because you have all the power. It doesn't hurt anybody. Oh, why are you throwing like a girl? Why are you throwing like a girl? Why are you using girl as a pejorative? Was there something wrong with girl? Yeah. You have to kind of shift to a slight lateral thinking and ask questions. And as long as all you're doing is asking questions, how can you possibly have a burden of proof?
That's good. That's good stuff, Matt.
Thank you. $19.99 from the Raven 200. Fun fact, Dave, zebras put zookeepers on workers' compensation the most. They can be quite aggressive. This knowledge probably doesn't give you the extra meaning, but you may find it interesting. Tell Jimmy I said, go fuck yourself.
It's a great little zebra trivia. Thank you for that. And thank you for the donation.
And another.
$4.99 from the Raven 200 again. Thank you. To make a young child pray that their deity will destroy a relative is just baffling and awful. That is textbook cult behavior. Absolutely. Absolutely hideous.
$20. Oh, is that Australian? Yes. From Heisenberg. Good on you, Dave.
Good on you, mate. Yeah, thank you, man. $19.99 from the Raven 200. A former friend once told me that my anxiety during the start of the pandemic was my own fault for, quote, leading my nephew away from God, unquote. I don't speak with said former friend anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's probably smart. Yeah. You don't need that kind of stuff. You don't need that. That's toxic. That's toxic and it's abusive. And we don't have to take that from anyone.
By the way, this notion of, oh, you led someone away from God. Okay. There is a context in which that could be a perfectly valid and reasonable thing, that I could lead someone to reject an idea. I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
But the person who ultimately rejects that idea is the one who is responsible. Somebody led them to that idea. Somebody led them away from that idea. Why is your God so weak and feeble that once he's got a hold of somebody, I can get them to let go with mere words?
Yeah. That's a pretty weak God with a pretty weak argument.
$19.99 from Janet Moorcraft. Dave and Matt, you make a tremendous difference in the lives of thousands. Thank you for who you are. I hope Will sets boundaries with his toxic family. Thank you, Janet. I hope Will does too.
Me too.
Everybody deserves, and I know it's difficult. I don't talk about it much, and Arden and other people who know me can back it up. I have, on many occasions, and I'm getting better at it, on many occasions, I have been so terrified of a lack of closure and desperate to be the sort of people-pleasing person that I have let people just run roughshod over me, take advantage, and absolutely, I had a heart attack because of someone well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the key elements was the emotional stress of someone basically taking advantage of me for a long period of time, or a protracted, difficult period of time. Learning to set boundaries was one of the best lessons I ever learned. And it's one of the reasons why my brother and I are so close, is he's the one person I don't have to worry. Well, he's not the one person. He's one of a handful of people that I don't have to worry about boundaries with. Whatever boundary I set is going to be respected, and it's not going to impact our relationship.
Yeah, people just feel obligated to when family's involved, and I'm going to keep pushing back against that notion because it does so much damage, and we are not obligated to let our families violate our boundaries and our sense of autonomy. We have to get that through our heads.
Yep. You deserve better.
$4.99 from Sarah Wilson. My paternal grandma had a stroke and was nearly vegetative for 12 years. At the end, I was relieved for her. I said goodbye to her true self long ago.
Yeah,
this is true. People who are just staying alive are often not living, and it's sad that we can't have a way to let them go.
And it's also, remember, it's each individual's life. And so when Dave and I talk about death with dignity and assisted suicide and all of those things, and I've been clear before, when my mind goes, somebody should take me out behind a barn and shoot me. But I won't know, so it won't be anything to upset me. It's like, hey, this is the thing that it upsets me most thinking about it now, that I could be, that my mind could not be functioning correctly. And I might still be here as a problem for other people. That, knowing that that's a possibility, just absolutely terrifies me now. On the other hand, if it happens, I won't fucking know about it. So do whatever you need to do
You'll be
with me.
oblivious.
Make your
You'll be
life easier.
oblivious
I
to
give
the-
you all permission now.
You'll be oblivious to the havoc that you're wreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. It is. It's you just become a burden. I deal with that now with my ALS. You know, I'm going to become more and more of a burden to people around me, and that's a tough thing to deal with. But my mind is sharp. Well, some might argue that point, but I think it is
You do all right, buddy.
to some level. But yeah, it's tough stuff. As
Is
you,
this when you? I'll do
New
it.
Zealand. New Zealand 8.99 from Lemon Peel Angelfish. Much love, Dave. Great show. Thank you. Thanks, Matt, Arden, and all the rest of the crew.
Yeah. Big thanks
you
to
so much.
Arden, who's overproducing in the other room, despite having a terrible headache earlier today, and
Thank
to
you, Arden.
all of our moderators in chat, to our call screeners, everybody who works with us here on the line. You guys have helped grow this channel, and
Incredible crew.
yeah. $5 from Renee. Living in a world where my whole generation is Catholic, I'm proud to be the first atheist. Love the line. Love to watch your debates, Matt. Thanks so much, Renee. I got
You're
some
forging a new direction. $20 from a Margin, two of my favorite hosts. Great to see you both here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for
Thank you,
moderating.
and good job call screening today.
Oh, a Morgan call screens as well. All right.
Oh, yeah.
$10 to Diane Upshaw. The tithing plate just landed in my lap. Take my money. Go fuck yourself for real, Jimmy. Thanks, Dave and Matt. Yes.
Thank you, Diane.
I'm sorry, Diane, but you've misunderstood. Tithing is not $10. It's 10%.
Yes.
And
we need to see your income statement. We need to see your income statement. Sorry.
Yes. Bring your income statements over. We'll vet you. No, thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. $20 from NetGirl Jimmy. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
$13.99 alleged dollars from Canadian extraordinaire Kathleen Moncrief. Best show on the internet. I'm thinking a lot this week about how to better protect people from religious overreach in healthcare, and it's so good to be talking about this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. As always, I feel like there's certain people here that we're thanking every show, every week.
Every time. Yep.
And yeah.
Thank you. We couldn't do it without you. Appreciate your support.
We could, but it'd be fucking boring. Be just me and Dave sitting here going, God, didn't that suck? Oh, yeah, boy, there was this other time.
$10 from Worthless Protoplasm, PhD. I love that name. I feel compelled to donate to the inaugural Dying Out Loud. So glad Dave is a regular host. Thanks for all you do, Dave and Matt. Well, thank you so much, Worthless.
But this isn't the inaugural one. You need to go back and watch last week's show.
Yeah. This is our second episode. And that's it.
List.
Well, there we are. Thank you, everybody. We mentioned the moderators and the Morgan for the screening, and be sure to support the show with Patreon/Call the Line. That's the Patreon channel. And as always, you'll see a list of the patrons as we sign off here, scrolling to the right. Matt, thank you so much. This has been fun.
I miss you, buddy. I'm so when Jimmy said, "Hey, you want to do Dave's show?" I was like, "Yes." He didn't even finish the sentence. I like you. I'll come on.
Going to see you in person in a few weeks in St. Louis at the Secular Student Alliance.
Yeah, I guess I better go finishing working on that magic show I'm going to do. So.
Yeah, get your magic together. So anybody in the St. Louis area, Matt and I are going to be at the Secular Student Alliance Conference June 16 through 18, I believe. Look it up online.
I'm skipping a reptile convention to do a magic show for the Secular Student Alliance because that's the most important thing.
Also, I don't want to put the thing back up because it ruins the flow, but Worthless Protoplasm's at another $5 and said, "Eat a bag of dicks, Jimmy." So, there you go.
Thank you, Worthless Protoplasm.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Tune into all the shows coming up on the line.
bet they can still hear us, just like most other times when we start running the credits at the end of the show. We're supposed to look like we're doing something or talking to each other.
How do I look at this? We're like those newscasters, start shuffling our papers and talking to each other.